Courage is being scared, but saddling up anyways. And my mom is willing to do anything, even if she is scared to do it.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go.
It's the first 2 weeks of a brand new quarter, which can only mean one thing. Be a Maker School is open for enrollment. So what exactly is Be a Maker School? It's an online course platform specifically for Western trades. You can learn from home and at your own pace and join a community of makers and entrepreneurs who can support you as you build skills and confidence in your newfound hobby or career. Be a Maker School offers courses in equine photography, cinch making, rawhide and leather braiding, silversmithing and engraving, leatherwork and tooling, and then there's also a business course called The Business of Making, where I am one of the instructors. That course specifically details all of the business aspects behind being a maker. Different sales channels, shipping, marketing, website, branding, email correspondence, goal setting, and a number of other topics. As I mentioned earlier, Be a Maker School is only open for enrollment for the first 2 weeks of every quarter. So if you're interested now, it's definitely worth checking out. Otherwise, you have to wait another 3 months. You can grab all of the info at beamaker.school. Again, that website is beamaker.school. I can't wait to hear how you have inspired and fostered the maker that is inside of you. Happy Tuesday. Happy Text Day. If we get happy about that, I don't necessarily know that that's something we get happy about, but it is Text Day nonetheless. It is April. This is also our 99th episode of Leaders of the West, which is absolutely wild to me. We started this journey this time 2 years ago. We were in the planning phase, and it is wild to just think about and reflect on how far we've came, how many amazing guests we've had the pleasure of sharing with you guys, the stories that we've been able to share, the insights, the hardships that those people have gotten through, and they've came out on the other side, which I know is something that is very inspiring and relatable to all of us because we all have to go through those valleys to get to the top of the mountain. And you never get to stay at the top of the mountain too long. There is always another valley to trek through. And there's always another top of the mountain or destination and goal. So anyways, this has really been the coolest journey in just getting to host this with you guys and having you guys all as listeners. And I know I always tell you how much I appreciate you, but man, that really rings true. I don't just say that to say that as fluff and filler. Like I genuinely mean, thank you guys for listening and for being here and for sharing this in your stories and for sending me a DM or a text message or an email about how much you loved an episode or how it was able to help you through things. And on the flip side too, if there's stuff that you guys want to hear, tell me, send me that DM or the email or send me the text, give me a call, whatever it is. I want to hear from you because I am so hell-bent on providing value always in life. I am not going to do something unless it is going to provide some kind of value. It is going to solve a problem, provide that solution. And that is always what I want this show to be for you guys. So if you guys do have feedback or thoughts or people that you want to see on the show, definitely let us know, or maybe even topics that you want to have discussed. Later this year, we have some topics that are a little bit different than what we've ever talked about. We have those planned. Those interviews are already in the works, but I think that it's something that's really important. All of that to say, nothing is off the table, if you will. If there is a topic that you want to hear on the show, absolutely tell me about it. But today's episode is all about my parents. And I really want to take a minute to brag on my parents and tell you guys some of the life lessons that I have been able to learn through them, whether that is, watching them work or working alongside them. I feel very, very blessed to be the child of my parents. And while there were times growing up where I wished I had a brother or a sister that I could play with, and even now, sometimes in just like having somebody to talk with and kind of share the load with. But I will tell you, I am so grateful to be an only child because I don't have to share my parents with anybody else, aside from Justin and my children, of course. And they definitely get their fair share of time with my parents. But I am just so honored and thankful that I have been able to do life and business with them. And the reason that I bring this up is because a few weeks ago, my parents sold their steers and their heifers 2 separate weeks in a row. So they take their cattle to the Twin Falls Livestock Commission in Twin Falls, Idaho. They take the steers one Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, they take the heifers. And the steers were bell ringers, not just at the sale yard that we sold at, but across the nation that day. And this isn't the first time that that has happened. In fact, that has been a thing for as long as I can remember. And as well as my parents' steers sell on a number of occasions, the heifers have actually brought more money than their steers because everybody wants to have Alan and Kim's genetics as part of their commercial cow herd. And that doesn't just happen to anybody. And I, again, am just so proud of what my parents have built. And I'm going to humble brag on them. And again, just share some lessons that I've been able to learn from them along the way. So both of the steers and the heifers, they've been bought by repeat buyers, which again, I think is just a testament to the quality of cattle that they raise. And for probably the last month leading up to the sale, anytime that I was out with Alan, let's say we were at a bull sale or we had gone to town or did something that we were around other cow people, men would literally come up to him and ask, "Hey, when are you taking your calves to town? I want to come and watch them sell." That is not necessarily something that you hear other people talking about or saying, because what they have built is truly impressive. And I am so incredibly proud of them. And I think one of the reasons that I feel so compelled to share this with you guys is in the last, 5 years, I have gotten some really, really cool accolades. We were featured on Rancher, and I've been featured in Western Horseman and with Red Angus and in a number of different articles and podcasts. And anytime I get that kind of recognition, I feel guilty about it because it should be my parents who receive that spotlight. The lessons that they have taught me about life and raising great cattle is the only reason that I have ever been able to create anything for myself. It was the reason that I knew what I wanted in a spouse and in a partner. It is how I have known how I want to raise my kids. Like, I'm going to say 98% of what I know, I have learned through my parents. To give you guys a little bit of a background, our ranch started in the 1940s, which was when my grandparents started our operation. They had 13 Hereford cows. It was right after the Great Depression, and like most people in those times, they hardly had anything to their names. My dad has told me a number of stories about my grandma and her family, and my grandpa and his family, the Thompsons and the Hobdys, and just how poor those people were. And that was so incredibly common in that time period, right? The early 1900s and the late 1800s, any time before now, was unkind to a lot of people. So to know that they started our operation literally with 13 cows, having absolutely nothing to their name, like that is something that is not lost on me. And in that time, since the 40s, my grandparents and my dad and his twin sister, Ellen, and my mom were able to really slowly and steadily grow our operation into what it is today. So Alan's dad passed away pretty unexpectedly in the 1970s. So after that point, he worked alongside his mom and his twin sister, Ellen. So yeah, they were Alan and Ellen because my grandparents didn't know they were going to have twins. Because at that time, there was no way to tell that you were going to have twins. My grandparents didn't know they were having twins until they had them. But anyways, my dad's twin sister did pass away in 1983. So I would have been about 3 years old at the time. And then my grandma Marie in 2000. So through all of those losses, which are obviously the hardest of times, my parents have still worked together to build that operation, to raise high quality cattle without ever gambling the future of our operation or taking outrageous risks, which I think is really important. You've got to be somebody who's willing to take risks, but there needs to be a threshold so that you're not going to bet it all and lose it all in that sense. In being an only child, I really had a front row seat to life. They always included me in their business decisions, and I was more than included in the cow work. Through that, my parents really did teach me countless lessons, but I want to share a few of those more memorable ones with you today. So the first lesson that my parents have taught me is taking pride in what you have. If you take care of what you have, it is going to last. Buying new things in farming and ranching isn't necessarily always the smartest financial bet. This is something we all know, and I'm a firm believer in that theory that it's not a bad year that breaks you, it is a good year, because in a year like this, let's say where the cattle market is high, and money is coming in, it can be really easy to spend that money instead of save it in preparation for those years that we know are going to come that are not going to be as financially advantageous for us. We still have a 1970s bobtail truck that we haul cattle in. And we have a 1-ton truck with stock racks that we haul horses in because we take care of what we have. When you come to our ranch, there's definitely some newer stuff, but there is a lot of stuff that is archaic, and it still works and runs and looks shiny and new because we put in the effort and we take pride in what we have. And that applies to far more than just our equipment. At home we have painted barns and corrals, and every 4 or 5 years, we spend at least a week giving it all a fresh coat of paint. Does paint help us raise bell-ringing cattle? Probably not. But it makes us incredibly proud that anytime anybody drives into our parking lot and sees how much care we put into our place, somebody may think to themselves, wow, if they take this much pride in how their barn and their corrals look, I bet when they have cattle in the feedlot, I bet that those pens are clean. And I bet that they are fed first thing in the morning. And I bet that they always have water, because again, it goes back to taking pride in what you have and always taking care of it. Rarely are you going to find a leaf that needs raked, or a weed that needs pulled, or a blade of grass that needs mowed, a board that needs screwed back on the fence, or wire that needs stretched. And I will also tell you, you are absolutely not going to find anything tied together with baling twine. And it has nothing to do with us or them being better than anybody. It again goes back to this idea of taking pride in what you have. And they fix it or take care of whatever it is when it needs done, and they never wait to do it until later. They are the ultimate definition of, if you can't do it right the first time, when will you ever have time to go back and fix it? Lesson number 2 that I have learned from my parents is not living outside your means. Whether it was a good year or a bad year in the cattle industry based on how much money they made at the sale, you are never going to know it by looking at my parents. Again, my grandparents, both my dad's parents and my mom's parents, were this same way. And it trickled down into my parents, which has also trickled down into me. Justin's family is the same way. So I have high hopes that this is going to trickle down into my children as well. But this goes hand in hand with taking care of and taking pride in what you have. Everything is an investment, and it is treated as such. In our ranch's lifetime, we have slowly and surely scaled our operation, but never in a way that has extended anybody outside of their means. And I'm sure that we have missed out on opportunities, but at the same time, what we have still exists because we haven't had to put it all on the line and unnecessarily gamble. And I think, especially with this day and age, in that idea of always keeping up with the Joneses, it can be really easy to look at other, businesses or operations or families and think, oh, if they're doing it, I need to be doing it too, or I need to be growing, or I need to take this opportunity. And there are definitely things that are going to come along in life that you need to be prepared for so that you can take full advantage of them. But at the same time, not every opportunity that comes to you is the right opportunity. So just being really mindful and aware of what is right for me, how am I going to be able to not only grow it, but then also maintain it? Because we know that, again, when it comes to slow and steady wins the race, it's one thing to grow, but it's a whole other thing to be able to maintain that. Again, this idea of not living outside of your means is something that my parents have done so well in continuing to, as they grow their operation and as they grow their genetics and whatever it may be, that they are growing with being able to maintain it in mind as well. The next thing I have learned from my parents, specifically a lesson from my mom, is being courageous. Courage is being scared, but saddling up anyways. And my mom is willing to do anything, even if she is scared to do it. She puts her big girl pants on, she ponies up, and she gets it done. And there is no job that woman is unwilling to take on. She feeds cows. She rides every day that we need her to. She hauls water in the water truck. She drives the tractor. She hauls cows to town. Aside from all of that, she is the best cook ever. Seriously, anytime I ever go to somebody else's branding, I always leave thinking, my mom makes a better meal. The woman really can do anything. And she is somebody who didn't grow up in agriculture. She grew up in town. Her dad was a dentist. Her mom was a teacher. Her mom ended up being a single mom of 4 children. My mom didn't necessarily have anything to do with ranching, although she was a phenomenal athlete. And I shouldn't say was because she still is. After college, she actually became a PE teacher as well as a varsity level coach in multiple sports. She grew up in a farming community, and so she wasn't completely disconnected from agriculture, but everything that she knows about the cattle industry and ranching, she has learned in the last 36 years in being married to Alan. And that takes a lot of courage as well, right? You're signing up for something that you know absolutely nothing about, especially when it comes to at the level in which my parents raise cattle and as hard as they work. I can only imagine the first 10 years that my mom was around, she was constantly learning something new. And, she never let that scare her or she never backed down from that. And I am so thankful that I have a mom who I have been able to learn that from. It's something that I am still learning because I am not the most courageous person, but I will tell you when I am faced with stuff that scares the hell out of me, I tell myself, my mom would do this. And I put my big girl pants on and I pony up and I try to get it done, whether I like it or not, because I know that's what my mom would do. And so I think that that is an important lesson for all of us to learn. And I'm very thankful that Kim Thompson has taught me that. Number 4 kind of goes along with that, but doing whatever it takes. My parents are the hardest workers. Anytime that something needs done, they do it. They don't wait. They never balk at whatever project is in front of them, no matter how difficult it is, how miserable it is, how impossible the task. They look it in the eye and they get it done. And when we have days where there isn't anything pressing, they will still go out and work on projects that they know are going to need done in the future. They're always thinking and working ahead so that if something happens, they won't be in an oh shit moment at that time. And ironically, because of that, especially in those summer months, there are days when they just work around the house, mowing the lawn, working in the garden, raking those leaves, putting boards back on fences, which they would totally see as a day off in agriculture. But in reality, they are still working. And so because they're always willing to get done whatever task it is, they have kind of made their work easy in that sense. My parents also really challenged me when I was a kid. They gave me really difficult tasks that I would struggle with because they knew that, number 1, that's how I was going to be able to find my grit. And 2, that's how I was going to become a strategic thinker. If I can't physically shut this gate or put this pipe together, how am I going to accomplish the task? And so I really had to sit there and think about, okay, how am I going to get this done? I still remember one time we have a pivot that we had wheat on. And so there is a section of this pivot that also goes over our pasture where we keep some heifers at home in the summer. And so the only problem that we ever have with this is when we have a crop like wheat, which we try not to plant in this pivot for this reason. You've obviously got to turn the water off in order to let the wheat dry. Well, if you turn the pivot off, then the pasture isn't going to get watered either. So in the past, when we've had to put a crop like wheat in this pivot, we then have to put hand lines through the pasture to make sure that the pasture stays wet. Because we live in Idaho, we get like 11 inches of rain a year. We have to irrigate in order to keep things green. And so I remember I was in high school at the time, and this is a pretty big pasture. At least it's really long. So there were a lot of lines of pipe, and my parents told me I had to go change pipe by myself. And I remember being out there. This would have been the middle of July, maybe end of July. It is hot as heck. And it was so difficult. I couldn't get any of the pipe in. I couldn't get it out. There was too much water because, again, you've got to run water through the pipe when you're changing hand lines. Otherwise, it's all going to come unconnected. But the problem is, obviously, water is coming through the pipe. So if you don't get it hooked up really quickly, then the piece you're trying to hook up is going to fill with water. It's going to get heavy. You have to drain it and start the whole process over again. I just remember being out there in July in the heat of the day in tears, thinking that if I was crying about it, my parents were going to come rescue me. No, that's not actually how life works. My parents didn't care that I was crying. They knew that I needed to be challenged. And even though I felt that it was an impossible task and I was absolutely miserable, I had to get it done. And I remember being so mad at them in that moment. And now looking back, I am so thankful that they made me do things like that, because I have learned so much from them in the importance of being able to do whatever it takes. Lesson number 5 my parents have taught me is work hard, play hard, specifically in that order. My parents work hard, and they always have. I think we've probably established this by now. And they always get their work done before ever going out and having fun. I have seen them miss out on plenty of fun stuff because there was work that needed to be done. Now, obviously, a person cannot work all day, every day, and it's healthy to go out and play. But my parents really do abide by the theory that you've got to work before you play. And I think that that's one of the reasons that they are as successful as they are. You know, that is the true definition of responsibility, doing what needs done, especially putting it before what you want to be doing. And I'm very thankful that they have taught me that lesson, because I am also faced with things of, hey, do I want to go out and do this fun thing today? Absolutely. Do I have a pile of things that I absolutely have to do today in order to be a great mom or a great rancher or a great businesswoman? Yes. If that's the case, I know I need to do those things first before I go out and enjoy myself, because that is, again, what is going to allow us to continue to scale and grow both personally and professionally. Number 6 is paying bills on time. This is a lesson that my parents taught me, but I know it is something that they learned from their parents. I remember a man once told me a story about when he used to haul fuel here. He had came to fuel up some tanks one afternoon, and my dad and grandma weren't around to pay. So he left the receipt on my grandma's kitchen counter. The next morning, he went to work at 8 a.m., and my grandma was there waiting for him to pay her bill. My parents have always been just as staunch in getting paid up. They will rarely even go in and buy something from the farm store, knowing that they could put it on their account and have the invoice sent at the end of the month. I have often seen my parents, whether it is Alan or my mom, go home, get their wallet, then go back into town and get whatever it is they needed. And that is, again, something that many business owners can relate to, that there are a lot of people out there who don't necessarily pay their bills or do it on time. And it is something that my parents know out of respect for the people that they're working with, that they absolutely have to do. And because of that, they have great relationships with the businesses and the people that they do work with. You know, nobody ever is going to worry if my parents aren't going to be able to pay them on time, because they make it a point to do so. And I think that that is something that is, again, just so crucial, whether it is in your personal life or in business. And it is something that I have really taken to heart as well, because I had such great role models in that. Okay, I've got a couple more for you. The next one is not getting wrapped up in trends. This one is going to be specifically more related to the cattle industry. I feel like every few years there is some kind of trend, especially genetically speaking. Sure, it may make you more money right then and there, but how long does it actually take to change your cow herd? A decade at least. And by then, a new trend has emerged and you're 10 years behind whatever that was. And as you try to change your herd to meet whatever the trend demands, what are you really doing in building your mother cow herd? My dad has always really encouraged me not to get wrapped up in whatever other producers are doing, and to put my head down and keep doing what I know is working for me. Specifically speaking to my parents and their cow herd, if they followed trends, they would have never been able to establish the reputation cow herd that they have. You know, instead, they'd be following everybody else. And if you want to go new places, you have to lead the pack, not follow what everybody else is doing. For example, Alan and Kim both, they know what works for them, and they have really carved out their own space in the market. Many ranchers sell through video markets, and they are fantastic, and I'm sure that we will too at some point. But instead of feeling pressured to follow the crowd in that, Alan has continued to sell his cattle through Twin Falls, like I had mentioned in the beginning, because they have an amazingly strong sale yard. Whatever the market is doing, that sale yard is at the top of the pack, and we are very, very lucky to have them so close to us. But doing that also allows my parents to have flexibility because they can sell based on those market highs and how much feed we have. My parents, they also get their cattle third-party verified to fit into programs like age and source verified, non-hormone treated, no antibiotics. And at one time, the closest sale yard who was certified for third-party cattle were in Madras, Oregon, or Torrington, Wyoming. Let me back up a little bit. If you get your cattle third-party verified for those different categories or any kind of a category, once they leave your operation, then let's say you're going to go sell them to a sale yard, you have to sell them through a sale yard that is also third-party verified. Otherwise, the verification that you've enrolled your cattle in falls off. So that's why so many people, again, are going to sell through a video market, because how that process works is you sell them through the video market. Your cattle are never actually leaving your ranch until they are picked up by the buyer. So that's kind of how that whole process goes. But all of that to say, at one time, the closest sale yards who were certified third party were Madras, Oregon, or Torrington, Wyoming. Those are not close to us at all. So instead of going with the flow, Alan talked to the family that owns Twin Falls Livestock Commission, and he talked to them about getting their sale yard verified so that he could get his herd verified, and allowing not only our family to sell third-party verified animals through the sale, but then any other rancher that takes their cattle to Twin Falls, they can access those premium programs as well. My parents, they also background their own cattle. And while most people sell in the fall, they feed their steers all winter long and they sell in February or March. They don't necessarily love feeding cattle, but there are fewer cattle in the market at that time, which allows them to capture a better price. So again, instead of following industry trends that shift every few years or doing what other people are doing, my parents have built their program on consistency and quality and really putting their heads down and doing what they know is right for them. If they changed their genetics to match every passing fad, they really wouldn't have that reputation herd that they do today. They have stayed true to what works for them, which has really set them apart as leaders in the industry. And I think that's good advice. Again, regardless of if you're in the cattle industry or not, it can be really easy to see what other people are doing and want to do that too, but then you're not being unique to yourself, and maybe that works for them and their business, but that's not you and your business. So you really have to make decisions on what is going to best impact you, your business, your operation, whatever that is. Next thing I've learned from my parents is being humble. Now, this one might seem ironic because here I am bragging about my parents, which some may take as not being humble, but part of being humble is being confident in yourself and the product that you put forth. Somebody came up to my dad and said, "Alan, you raise shitty cattle." Alan would probably just look at the guy and laugh and walk away. That comment wouldn't bother him because he knows the caliber of animals that he raises. Same with my mother. She is going to turn her head and walk away, and she is not going to be affected by that because she knows what she does. They are confident in themselves and in their product. They don't have to try to talk that person into believing that they raise great cattle. They know that their product speaks for itself. So if Alan or Kim know that they raise great cattle, how are they humble? Because they don't talk about themselves. My dad does not tell the world what he is doing, nor does my mom. And one thing I've realized is people who have to boast really loudly about themselves usually aren't that confident. Now, yes, of course, you have to be able to toot your own horn and brag every now and then. You need to be your biggest cheerleader. You need to be your own biggest fan. And you do need to an extent be talking about what you're doing, because that's what marketing is, right? So there's a difference between marketing and bragging. But if you know it, then that really should be enough, right? You know it. God knows it. The people you're closest to probably know it. Maybe you've told your spouse, your siblings, your parents. Maybe your friends see it because they're watching you work your tail off again and again. Whatever you are putting out into the world, it is going to speak for itself. People are going to take notice. There are absolutely times where you should be talking about that, but you don't need to talk about it all of the time. And I am so thankful that my parents raised me with that skill set. I would like to think I'm pretty humble because that has also been one of the factors that has created so much confidence within me. I do all of the things that I've seen them do all of the things that I have just shared with you, really putting their heads down and doing the work and taking pride in what they have. not living outside their means, being courageous, doing whatever it takes, working hard and then playing hard, paying bills on time, not getting wrapped up in trends. And when you put together all of those little things, that's part of what allows you to be confident in yourself, in your business, whatever that may be. And again, I'm so thankful for my parents. They really are two of the best. And even though they have nothing to do with Of the West or any of necessarily the personal career things that I have done, I can tell you that if they hadn't laid that foundation inside of me, any of the things I ever would have tried to build or create in life, they would not happen. Just because I learned this in the cattle industry didn't mean that I wasn't able to take it out and, use it when we had Western Runway or use it now in Of the West or, with speaking engagements or whatever it is. And I am just so incredibly thankful and proud to be the daughter of Alan and Kim. And I am thankful that I got to brag on them with you guys all today, especially for our 99th episode. That feels kind of kismet, if you will. So if you're local and you see Alan and Kim out in the wild, please don't tell them about this because they are going to be so embarrassed that I would talk about them because, again, they are so humble. But I felt compelled to share because, like I said before, I am so proud to be their daughter. I am so proud of the type of cattle that they raise, the type of people that they are, how they treat other people. They really are just the best of the best. And I am so incredibly thankful for them. And I'm thankful for you. I will see you guys back here next week with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West, episode 100. We're going to have to do something big for that. So stay tuned. We'll see you then.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.